Leading tonight's land acknowledgement is Catherine Festa of the Haida tribe and a member of the King County Native Leadership Council. Please welcome Catherine Festa.
Thank you. How means hello and thank you in Hadkil, which is my language. I am the granddaughter of Elizabeth Collison. I am the daughter of Marina Jones. I am Catherine Festa, Haida Raven from the Double Fin Killer Whale Clan. First Nation, Old Masset, Haida Gwaii, BC. My mother was Haida born and raised. My father was first generation Italian American. I am the current chair and founding member of the King County Native American Leadership Council. We are the first affinity group at King County. I was born and raised in Seattle on Duwamish land. I currently live on Puyallup and Duwamish tribal land. November is Native American Awareness Month. I ask you to explore your local tribes and their cultures. It is important to understand the long-standing history that has brought you to reside on the land and to seek and understand your place within that history. We hope this will strengthen our spiritual bonds and give meaning to our lands and our people. Know that colonization is a current ongoing process, and we need to build our mindfulness of our present participation. Although land acknowledgments are powerful statements, they are only meaningful when they are coupled with authentic and sustained relationships with Indigenous communities to the First Peoples. And so I'd like us to acknowledge and show respect for the Indigenous peoples, our elders and ancestors, past, present, and future, on whose land we stand. Today, we offer deep gratitude to the Muckleshoot, Snoqualmie, Skykomish, Tulalip, Stillaguamish, Suquamish, Puyallup, and Duwamish tribes, and to the Coast Salish people whose land and water supports us. Let us also commit to learning more about the histories and celebrate their culture and traditions that remain a vital part of our communities. For thousands of years, we were here on this land, thriving. We are now a small percentage of the population, but we are still here. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello and good evening, legislators, honored guests, and community members. Welcome to the 36th Annual King County Legislative Forum for Children with Developmental Delays and People with Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities. First and foremost, thank you for being here. It is an honor to speak this evening. I would like to introduce myself. I'm Braden Sedone, 15 years old, a 10th grader in high school. And I self-advocacy from the 47th district. At the age of 4, while attending preschool, I was diagnosed with autism and intellectual disability. This summer, I was honored to visit the Washington State Capitol building in Olympia, where laws are voted on. My dreams came true because I always wanted to see the Capitol. It truly was a gorgeous place. This past summer, I participated in a self-advocacy leadership training. It was the utmost greatest experience to learn about laws pertaining to protect people with disabilities like me. There, I realized how important it was to protect my beliefs and rights and values. Laws protecting people with disabilities are so important because it helps me in today's society and will ever benefit and shape my future. Without these laws put in place for people like me with disabilities, it will cause so many hardship challenges like health care, housing, jobs, and resources in school. The passing of these laws has been a huge sus- success. Many people with disabilities benefited by sharing their successful stories, and I'm one of them. Being an advocate, my voice will always be heard, not to be silent. All people should be treated equally, whether they have disabilities or not. The sky is limit when we all focus, fight for our rights, and come together for one another. I hope you enjoyed learning about me today. Thank you again for your time and dedication this evening. I now like to introduce you to my co-MC Angel Angel Anthony Pera.
Thank you, Bradens. Good evening and welcome to you all. It's truly an honor to be here today. My name is Anhol Para Ishkoi. I am 16 years old, which is partially a square number. I'm currently in 11th grade and from District 41, which are both prime numbers. When I was 3.5 years old, I was diagnosed with autism. As a teenager on the spectrum, I want what every young person wants: to feel included and supported. At school, it can feel like people don't believe in us or think we can succeed. What we really need is more one on one support and educators. I also had the chance to attend self advocacy leadership training along with Bradens. That training taught me that I have the right to raise my voice for myself and other people like me who may not have the courage to speak up. There are therapies and services to help us manage challenges and be more independent. But too often, those supports take months or even years to access. We need people, especially leaders and decision makers, to listen to us, to truly hear what we need so that we can grow into independent adults who live with confidence. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I hope my story and other stories you hear tonight remind you all that with the right support, every young person can thrive. Blessings to all of you.
Before we get started, let's make sure everyone can access the event. For anyone using interpretation services, if you have any technical issues, please go to the check-in table that's outside of the ballroom. We encourage everyone to speak slowly for our interpreters and to explain acronyms. And now Angel on Hell will talk about the quiet room and the family room.
During the program, if you need a quiet or dark space, you can use our quiet room up in the second floor and return whenever you like. If you need movement, you can move between this room and the family room as you please. The family room is on the first floor and has activities. You can watch the forum there too from a TV screen in that room. Something that is new this year, you may have noticed King County staff is welcoming you all to the parking lot when you arrive. These folks have umbrellas and flashlights and are available throughout the night to escort you to your car. Just stop at the check-in table and ask for supports. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Teddy Kemarimba, born and raised in Argentina. Teddy is a social worker by professional with experience in child welfare, mental health, and working with the intellectual and developmental disability populations. But Teddy is much more than that. She's a drummer, a gardener, and loves to watch movies. She's also a mother and a daughter. Please welcome Teddy Karimba.
I'm already crying before I speak. Thank you so much, co-host. That was so wonderful. I loved watching you just do your thing, ASL and all that. Thank you so much. All right. Wow, what an evening. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here before you today. My name is Teddy Diana Kemirembe, and I use she, her pronouns. I would like to thank the Developmental Disability and Early Childhood Supports Division for giving me this opportunity to speak today at this very important legislative forum. I come here today as a mother of two lovely, beautiful girls. You'll hear some making noise there. That's Sabella. With developmental disabilities. As the daughter of an aging mom, and my mom is here too. My mom has always been my primary support, and she is also a paid provider for my girls. I'm here as an immigrant, as you can tell with my accent. I'm born and raised from Uganda. Those of you who haven't been there, I would encourage you to visit. It's in East Africa, close to Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Congo. I think you've heard, but that's where I come from. We speak a lot of languages. So the most one is Swahili. So I'll say jambo, which means hello. Jambo. Yeah. As a 2 times cancer survivor and a survivor of domestic violence, I am also a current co-chair for Washington Immigrant Network, which is a business resource group for all state employees and previous state employees or anyone who is an immigrant who wants to join us. And I'm also here as a community engagement advisor with the state of Department of Social and Health Services. And we recently are going through what they call Reimagine. Have you heard about that? Yeah, so now from DDA to Developmental Disability Community Living Services, something, and I don't know because it's a lot. You can report back to them that I said that actually. I also stand here today as a firm believer in what is possible when we lead with equity, dignity, and love. And those are not just buzzwords, actually. In our community, and when I say our community, I mean all the intersectionality that I just mentioned above. Inclusion isn't a favor, it's a right. And today, we gather to protect that right for every child with developmental disabilities, every sibling navigating invisible burdens, and every caregiver holding it all together. I was hoping they will show my slides. I don't know who was supposed to do that. I had some amazing pictures. So I'll go, that's Sabrine. So I'll start with Sabrine. That's my firstborn. And I had IV to get this baby because I have endometriosis. So let me tell you about Sabrine. Sabrine was born prematurely in New York. How many have been in New York? New York City. She's a New York girl. And she was in NICU for almost 2 weeks. Actually, that's why she got autism. At 2 years old, she was diagnosed with autism. Then she was not speaking. So we had to do a lot of speech therapy, occupational therapy, and then later on, applied behavioral analysis, which is ABA, which was hard to get actually. It took us almost 2 years, just as one of the co-hosts said, to get that. So that's really real. With consistency and calling out of work to take her for services, thank God at 9 years old, she actually started speaking, asking for ice cream. Though she may struggle to understand because she just imitates things that she watches on YouTube. It takes others a long time to understand her. She's a loving and funny girl who loves drawing, music, and of course, water. It's always water that I worry about as a parent, and the wandering was a big one too, because as they wander, we know it's not safe and they can die. I'll move to Sabella, the one who was making the sounds. So my other one is Sabella. That's my lovely Sabella there. She's now 10 years old. At 3 years old, she stopped speaking. And at 5, she stopped walking and using her motor skills. And that was a time when we had COVID, actually. We thought it was COVID related, but there were no diagnosing kids at that time with COVID. We were always in the emergency room. After a long advocacy, I call it fighting with the doctors, actually. She was misdiagnosed with autism. As a social worker and as a profession with masters in social work, it was so hard for me to understand why I was going through what I was going through. Most of my experience in child welfare, mental health, and IDD population did not actually matter. With a lot of things going on, that's when they asked for, oh, can she have a genetic testing and EEG, EKG to find out what was really going on. That's when they said she can see a neurologist after all those years. Then they said she may have Rett syndrome. I slept on my laptop reading about Rett syndrome and what that really meant. I had never heard about it. A lot of people, including doctors in Washington, have also not heard about Rett syndrome. You'll be surprised. For over 2 years, we were going to Texas for specialized services. That travel stopped this year. Even though Sabella still needs treatment, I canceled our trip because of fear of traveling due to immigration and customs enforcement, commonly called ICE, the ice that you don't drink, actually. So much is happening around us as immigrants. Though I'm here legally with a green card, I'm still afraid to travel. I know I'm not alone. I have heard from other parents like myself who are even afraid to go to their children's school or even church. Even doing normal things that we do, shopping, we're just afraid. Right now, Sabella is doing better. She is she's one of the first individuals to be on a FDA approved medication for Rett syndrome called Debu. And actually it took me a lot to get it because of insurance and all that. Next slide. As you may know, as I said, my mom and the girls and me. As we navigate these times together, I know that we have support and that we are not alone. For me, I strongly believe it takes a village to raise a child. My main support has always been my mom, but as she's aging, she no longer she doesn't drive actually, and now she also has a lot of medical appointments, and I now have to take her for all these appointments. I find myself saying, oh my God, I'm part of this sandwich family or sandwich generation. I wonder how many in this room are. The school also has been my support. And sometimes I wonder what I would do without school if the school bus stops coming, actually. I know the school may not be a support for many. I have had some parents express concerns with some schools not really supporting families, especially when it comes to behavior associated with IDD or following the IP rules. In my job, I have heard from parents whose children have complex diagnosis. One of the parent told me about her daughter who has severe behaviors associated with her diagnosis. The school seemed surprised by these behaviors, even if it was in the IP. At one time, they even had to call Child Protective Services on her, even though these behaviors were already written in the IP. Another parent told me that her child jumped when people tried to hug the child. This behavior called steaming, and it's due to sensory overload in autistic individuals, but the school still called CPS and police. Parents live in fear. All these complex systems getting involved with their families, and it keeps parents awake at night, including myself. Sabrine used to wonder all the time, and I was always afraid what would happen if CPS or police was involved. In addition to this, I also know for sure that language access is a real thing. As you can tell, I have an accent, and I speak almost 7 languages in my brain. So language barrier is a real thing for parents with special needs, creating challenges in difficult. It's very difficult for us to advocate for our children, accessing services, and misunderstanding evaluations and treatment plans, which can lead to miscommunication and limited support. This can also result in parents feeling disempowered or excluded from their child's education and health care, ultimately impacting the child's development and outcomes. I hope that the need for language access will continue to be a highlight as we go through this. Maybe you hear my story, the story of a single mom with 2 girls with IDD, a 2 times cancer survivor, domestic violence survivor, or maybe even you feel sympathy for me. But I'm here to say I don't need sympathy. What I need is easier access to services. I want to share the values we talk about in my work. These values resonate with me, not only with DCHS as an employer, but also as a mother and community member. Our first one is welcome all with access and inclusion, serve with respect and dignity, collaborate with community, which I think I'm doing right now, improve services continually, communicate with clarity and choice. When I think about honoring these values, I think about people who find human services to shape their own lives. We must preserve the services that keep families afloat on a continuum from birth to death. We must protect access to these services, especially for families like mine, people of color, rural communities, and immigrants navigating complex systems. Equity is not a buzzword, it's a commitment. And we must strengthen these services by investing in innovation, culturally responsive care, and tech access as yes. Evidence-based services and practices really do matter. We need to strengthen services for people like my daughter Sabella. I want to end by saying, so today let's do more than talk. Let's legislate with love. That was Sabella. Let's fund with foresight. Let's lead with courage, because when we preserve, protect, and strengthen, we are partnering together to create the lives we all want to live. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Teddy. And now we will hear from Megan Cromer, the director of the King County Department of Community and Human Services, Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division, and the Deputy Director, Holly Wool.
Thanks so much. I think we can do an extra clap for our co-MCs. They're doing so amazing. Thank you so much, Teddy, for sharing your story and reminding us that when we lead with equity and dignity and love, anything is possible. Your words ground us in why we're here tonight and the importance of protecting inclusion as a right and not a favor. Good evening, everyone. I'm Megan Cromer, the Division Director for the Developmental Disabilities and Early Childhood Supports Division. I also join you tonight as the mom of 2 children with developmental disabilities.
Hi, everybody. I'm Holly Wu, and I'm the Deputy Director for the division. We're so glad to be here with you tonight to share our 2026 state legislative priorities and to lift up the voices and stories that guide our work.
Each year, this forum is a reminder that change happens when community leads. The priorities we're sharing here tonight reflect what we've heard from families and providers and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities throughout King County. They center equity, inclusion, belonging, and the right for every person to live and work and thrive in their community.
We'll share 6 priorities throughout the evening, and each one will be connected to the stories you'll hear.
Tonight, we're asking the legislature to preserve, protect, and strengthen access to core services for people with developmental delays and intellectual and developmental disabilities. We know that this year brings both opportunities and lots of challenges for state and federal budget pressures that will impact the services for people that depend on them most. Our message is simple and steadfast. Investments in people with developmental disabilities are not optional. They are essential to cultivate a thriving and equitable community. King County's state legislative priorities in intellectual and developmental disabilities reflect that belief. They call on the legislature to protect Medicaid, sustain early support and special education for young children, maintain employment and community inclusion services, invest in affordable and accessible housing, strengthen language access and culturally rooted supports, and preserve behavioral health care for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Each of these priorities is about making sure that people can live with dignity and stability and connection, and that the systems around them are strong enough to make all of that possible.
And I encourage folks, if you're standing and you want a seat, there are lots of seats at some of the round tables, so feel free to move around. Okay. The county's first legislative priority this evening captures the necessity to protect Medicaid and safety net services for all, including people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Medicaid is a foundation of support for people with disabilities. It not only provides health insurance, it also funds essential services that make independence, safety, and community life possible. With upcoming federal Medicaid changes under H.R. 1 and other national cost-cutting measures, access to critical care and supports is at risk. We're asking lawmakers to safeguard access to the healthcare, employment, respite, and daily living supports that make independence possible for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Our first speakers, Rachel and Nate Nemhauser, will share why these protections are critical.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Rachel Nemhauser. I live in the 41st District. I am deeply grateful for the chance to speak with you today with my son, Nate, who's not wanting to tear himself away from the iPad, but that's totally fine. He is one of nearly 280,000 adults with disabilities in Washington State who rely on Medicaid. With Nate's permission, I want to just tell you a little bit about him. Nate is 21 years old. He's autistic and he has an intellectual disability. He's loving, mischievous, and an avid collector of all things horror movie related. Like, we have 3 life-size Chucky dolls in our house. Nate relies on daily support through Medicaid home and community-based waiver services, including respite care, personal care, and employment support. These services keep him safe, healthy, and engaged in the community. And in turn, the community has the benefit of his talents, his skills, and his strengths. And maybe more importantly, they have the opportunity to know him and to see firsthand what true inclusion looks like. Right now, Nate is in his final year of his school's transition program. He also works 6 hours a week at our neighborhood Pagliacci Pizza, you could see on his hat, supported by a job coach. He gets a paycheck and a free slice of pizza after every shift. I know, it's a dream scenario. He absolutely loves his job and the sense of pride and purpose and free pizza that it gives him. Nate talks all the time about his future. When school ends next year, he wants to share an apartment with his girlfriend. He wants to work more hours at Pagliacci Pizza and, of course, decorate his room with Chucky and Pennywise posters. He dreams of starting a family and building a life like that of any other adult. With the home and community-based waiver services that we currently have access to, these dreams are attainable. They're terrifying, really, a little scary, but attainable. When I see the life that Nate is building now, I can't help but think back to the phone call I made when he was 4 years old. At the time, buckling under the pressure of caring for a child with high support needs, I reached out to the Developmental Disabilities Administration, that's now known as Developmental Disabilities Community Services, for anyone keeping track, to ask for help. After telling our story and answering a few questions, I was told we were going to be on a wait list for 8 to 9 years. 8 to 9 years. I remember hanging up the phone and feeling devastated. It's an awful feeling as a parent to build up the courage to reach out for help, only to be told there is no help. It doesn't exist. To be told you're on your own and no support is coming. And in the end, it actually did take almost 8 years before Nate finally did start receiving the services he needed, and before we were finally able to surround him with the support he needed to thrive. For families like ours, Medicaid has made Nate's life possible, and his dreams are achievable. Through Medicaid, Nate has access to essential supports, healthcare, employment assistance, personal care, community-based services that help him live and work and belong. These aren't extras and they're not luxuries. They're the scaffolding that holds his life together. But after the recent Medicaid cuts go into effect over the next few years, that scaffolding is at risk of collapsing. The programs and supports that Nate depends on are being squeezed. Job coaching hours are at risk of being reduced. Case managers are stretched too thin. Administrative hurdles are growing, and the fear of that many of us have carried for years, that our loved ones could lose the stability we've worked really hard for them to gain, is a reality. These cuts have real human consequences. Without support, Nate could lose his job. I hate to even say it. He could lose his access to health care and his dreams for the future. He can lose his place in the community that he loves so much. And young families today who are just beginning this journey, families who make that same phone call that I did when Nate was 4, will once again hear the same impossible wait times. Those families might face even greater barriers, and that's terrifying. That's why I want to share our story and to let you know why it is important to Nate and to me that Washington's Medicaid-funded services are protected and the gaps left by federal cuts are filled. We need to make sure that Nate doesn't lose the supports that allow him to live with dignity and purpose. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Nate is not a waste. He is not a line item on a budget. He is a young man with plans, dreams, talents, and a deep desire to contribute. Medicaid makes that possible. For Nate, Medicaid means freedom. Freedom to work, to be part of his community, and to live the life he envisions for himself. Without it, Nate's freedom disappears. When you're making your decisions, please remember our story. The supports that make independence, inclusion, and dignity possible for people with disabilities and their families in our state need to be protected. Nate and 280,000 others like him are counting on your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel and Nate, who's not a line item on a budget. That one is going to stick with me. We know it's not always easy to revisit your story and to relive the challenges that you faced and all of the barriers that you've faced just to get the supports and services that you and your family need. Your experiences remind us that protecting access to care and services that have been supported by Medicaid isn't just about funding programs. It's about protecting people's, again, stability, dignity, and the foundation that allows them to thrive, which in turn strengthens individuals and families and ultimately our communities that we live in. It's about protecting people's stability. Tonight, our next legislative priority is to preserve care for infants and young children, especially those with developmental delays and disabilities who are already facing the greatest barriers to accessing services. Early Supports for Infants and Toddlers, or ESIT, connects families with the tools and relationships that they need to support their children's development from the very beginning. Over the past decade, the number of children served has more than doubled. Think about that, more than doubled, showing both the incredible impact of the program and the urgency in sustaining it. We're grateful for the legislature's commitment to special education funding in the 2025 session that in part is supporting the needs of young children with developmental delays from the age of 0 all the way up to 5. This year, we asked the legislature to protect funding for early supports for infants and toddlers and for preschool special education services for children who are ages 3 to 5, ensuring that children and families can access the continuous, high-quality support that they need to reach their full potential. Now we'll hear from our next speaker, Destiny McKenna.
Good evening. My name is Destiny McKenna, and I'm a proud mom to 2 amazing little boys, Jeffrey, who's 5, and Blake, who's 3. My husband, Charlie, and I lovingly call them our little hellions because they're mischievous, energetic, brilliant, and incredibly joyful. More than anything, we want them to have long, happy, carefree childhoods. And thanks to early support infants for toddlers or toddler services, otherwise known as ESIT, they actually can. But we weren't always sure. Sorry, my voice. We weren't always sure that this would be the case. Our son Jeffrey was born at 37 weeks and spent 2 weeks in the neonatal intensive care unit. As he grew, we knew he wasn't meeting his milestones. He couldn't crawl or sit up. When he was 6 months old, we brought him to to an ESIT provider for a formal developmental evaluation. That's when we learned that he had motor and speech delays. Thus, Jeffrey's ESIT journey began with weekly occupational and speech therapies. Jeffrey gradually found his balance, learned to crawl, and began to speak out loud more and more. We were blown away. We also felt like partners in his therapies. These services were delivered right in our home, and our therapist treated us like trusted partners. We were beginning to feel very hopeful about our little family, but then life got really hard. We were struggling to make ends meet, and we began to move around a lot. During this time, our ESIT providers were there, literally delivering diapers and other basic supplies alongside services. But when Jeffrey was about 10 months old, the worst possible thing had happened. He was like, sorry, he was taken into foster care. That was the hardest time of our lives, but we weren't going to let that break our family or interrupt Jeffrey's ESIT services. While Jeffrey was in foster care, we worked closely with his foster family. We actually attended his therapies together with his foster family as one team, looking out for Jeffrey because because all of us loved him so much. Our ESIT providers never questioned us about it. They treated us with respect like any other parents. I'm always thankful for that. We visited we visited Jeffrey every day, and then after many months, in around April 2022, we got Jeffrey back. This might have been the craziest month of our lives. And what in that month we got Jeffrey back. I had my second child, Blake, and we moved into our Bothell apartment where we live to this day. Our younger son, Blake, who also had speech delays, so he eventually also enrolled in ESIT services. Just like Jeffrey, he's made fabulous progress through these services too. Today, we see no limits for our kids, and that's in large parts that's in large part that's all to the support we receive from our ESIT providers. So though as but the budget should though as the budget situation this year, it is important to our family that the early support for infants and toddler services are preserved and protected. These services change our kids' lives, our lives, and they change the lives of thousands of families all over the state. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Destiny, for sharing your powerful story. It's a reminder that investing early doesn't change just one child's life. It strengthens families and communities for generations. King County's next legislative priority centers on protecting employment and community inclusion services that allow people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to live, work, and belong in their communities. We know that meaningful employment and community connections lead to better health, stronger relationships, and greater independence. We also know that investing in these services strengthens families, communities, and Washington's workforce. Yet, provider capacity challenges tied to underfunded rates and workforce shortages continue to limit access to these services. King County is asking the legislature to maintain and protect funding for employment and community inclusion services and ensure that home and community-based services waivers remain available for all students transitioning out of high school. This funding supports legislation from the 2025 session that extended school for transition students through age 22. Our next speaker, Vivica Black, will share more about the benefits these opportunities provide.
Good evening, legislators, honored guests, and community members. My name is Vivica Black. I live in the 30th District. I'm really happy to be here today to share a little about my journey. I'm here with my job coach, Selena, and I would like to share about my employment experience. I have schizoaffective disorder and autism, and I've come a long way to get to where I am today. I work for the Federal Way School District Services team. Every day, I help prepare breakfast, lunch for students all across the district. It feels so good to know that what I do helps kids have the energy they need to learn and grow. Back in high school, things weren't always easy. I started at Merritt Behavioral School. When it closed, I was the only student there. I ended up moving to Thomas Jefferson High School when I, and I had a one-to-one paraeducator who helped me adjust. I also got involved in drama class, which turned out to be something I really loved. Drama helped me come out of my shell, build social skills, and I feel more confident. Being around people, it helped me grow up a lot. After high school, I joined the Achieve program. That was a big turning point for me. The Achieve programs, I started studying early childhood and development education. I worked with young students who needed emotional and academic support, students who reminded me of myself when I was their age. That experience changed how I saw myself and realized that I could help others with that right support and achieve anything. Later, I started working with a employment provider, and that's when I started to find my place in the world of my work. My job coaches didn't just help me find a job, they made me feel confident, respected, and valued. They supported me when I needed help with my mental health and showed me how to communicate better with my coworkers. When I worked at Burlington Coat Factory, I got to help train some of my coworkers who also have uh, like the same disabilities that I do, and that made me feel proud. I like to come full circle. Now in with nutrition services, I'm part of a great team and I love what I do. I feel independent, confident, and respected. And I know I wouldn't be here today if it without the Achieve program and my employment provider. They provided me tools and the support I need to grow, to work, and to live my best life. That's why these programs are so important. School to work, mental health, support, job coaches, and accommodations don't don't just help people like me, they help all of us build a more stronger, inclusive community. With the right support, people with disabilities can succeed, contribute, and thrive. And I'm living proof of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your powerful story, Viveka. The transition from school to adulthood is a pivotal time in any person's life. And as Viveka shared, employment supports truly make a difference. As we think about what it takes for people to thrive beyond just those early transitions, housing becomes just as essential as employment. Our next legislative priority is to maintain access to safe, accessible, and affordable housing with wraparound services. Across Washington, nearly 37,000 adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities face housing insecurity. In King County, many people with intellectual and developmental disabilities experience homelessness or live in unstable situations due to lack of accessible and affordable options. King County calls on the legislature to continue investing in affordable housing, including flexible state investments in operations, supportive services, repairs to existing homes, and to grow the workforce that provides the support that people need to live independently. Housing stability isn't just about a roof over someone's head. It's about dignity and safety and creating a true sense of belonging in the community. Now we'll hear from our next speaker, LaShayla Jones, who will share about the importance of accessible housing for families with disabilities.
Good evening, legislators, honored guests, and community members. My name is LaShayla Jones, and I live in Legislative District 32. I'm a mother of 2 children with autism. They are 5 and 6 years old. Tonight, I am here to discuss the importance of accessible and ADA-compliant housing for families with disabilities. Last year, my children and I experienced homelessness. We lived in our car. I tried to go to a shelter, but we were asked to leave because my son made loud noises due to his autism. It was one of the hardest moments of my life. Finally, I worked with an organization who advocated for me, and I was able to get subsidized housing. I was so happy. After everything we went through, my kids and I finally had a permanent housing and a chance to feel safe. On my application, I clearly stated that both of my children have autism and we needed an ADA accessible unit because of their behavioral and safety needs. I assumed we would be placed in the correct unit, but the apartment we were giving is not accessible and not safe for my children. My kids have fallen multiple times on the stairs. The windows are not secure for children with sensory or behavioral needs. Even after reporting this many times, we have not moved. Accessible units are very hard to find and more are needed. Yes, families like mine need housing, but we also need the right kind of housing. Housing that is accessible, housing that accommodates disabilities, housing that keeps our children safe. It is important to me when laws are passed, our housing programs are funded, that ADA units and disability accommodations are required and enforced, especially for families with children with autism and developmental disabilities. Our safety and our stability depend on it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, LaShayla, for sharing your story and for sharing your experiences with us here today. True access to care requires that everyone can find, understand, and use the services designed to support them. That's why King County's next legislative priority to support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities is to invest in culturally rooted and linguistically responsive services. So supporting all people, no matter what language they speak or where they come from, to access the services they need. In King County, over a quarter of residents speak a language other than English at home. For families navigating disability systems, this can create barriers that no one should have to face alone. King County is asking the legislature to maintain and strengthen interpretation, translation, and cultural navigation services, and to protect the rights of immigrant and refugee communities to access them. When we make our systems more inclusive for multilingual and multicultural families, we make them stronger for everyone. Our next story from Saba Elmi brings us to life.
magacaygu waa Sabaax Cilmi. Waan salaamayaa qof kasta oo halkan jooga. Aad baan ugu mahadcelinayaa in la dhageystaan caawa halkan imi. Stoorigaygana waxay akhriyi doonaa turjubaanka garabkayga fadhiya. Aad baan ugu faraxsan halkan imaado.
My name is Sabah Elmi. I greet everyone here tonight, and I thank you for listening to my story. The interpreter next to me will read my story for you. Sabah Elmi. Language Access Services. Good evening, legislators, honored guests, and community members. My name is Sabah Elmi. I live in District 11. I am the mother of 7-year-old son, Hamza Aiden, who has autism. I'm here tonight to talk about why culturally rooted and language responsive services are life-changing for immigrant families like mine. For a long time, I struggled to understand the system that were supposed to help my son. I didn't know how to ask for Developmental Disability Community Services. This used to be called DDA, Apply Behavior Analysis, ABA, or Individual Education Plan, IEP services. I didn't always understand what the professionals were telling me. English is not my first language. The paperwork, the meetings felt overwhelming. Another parent referred me to an organization that helped me, and that's when things finally changed. For the first time, I had support from someone who understood my culture and my language. My cultural broker helped me understand my son's services, taught me how to schedule and request an interpreter, and helped me learn how to speak up in meetings. They bridged the gap between me and the professionals and helped me understand my son's needs so he could get the support he deserves. Families like mine want to advocate for our children, but without interpretation, translation, and cultural navigation, we are left behind. Our children need service because we don't care, but because the system are not accessible. Service providers cannot do this alone. They need more funding and resources to offer culturally rooted and linguistically responsive support, especially for BIPOC immigrant families raising children with disabilities. When you make decisions, please remember my story and remember that language access is equal access for our children. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Saba, for sharing your experiences. Language access is equal access for all of us. The final legislative priority that we're sharing with you tonight is to preserve and strengthen behavioral health crisis services and treatment for all, including people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Too often, children, youth, and adults with both developmental disabilities and behavioral health needs face long hospital stays or repeated emergency room visits because there aren't enough community-based supports to meet the need. King County is asking the legislature to invest in the behavioral health workforce, including training and retaining providers who understand the unique needs of people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. These investments will reduce crises, keep families together, and create stronger, more connected communities. Now we'll hear from our next speaker, We are going to hear from Mahad Dahir, who's filling in for Felice Hassan.
All right, thank you so much, Megan, and good evening, legislators, honored guests, and and my fellow community members. My name is Mahad Tahir or Mahad Dahir, and I'm speaking on behalf of Felice Hassan or Felice Hassan, who couldn't be here tonight, and she resides in legislative district number 37. Felice is the mother of her 23-year-old son Muhammad or Muhammad, who has autism. Tonight, I'm here to speak about behavioral health services for individuals with autism. Behavioral health is extremely important to me because my son began experiencing serious behavioral health challenges when he was about 20 years old, right after COVID, when he returned to the school system. During one crisis after the other, he had to be taken to the emergency room and stayed there for a couple of weeks. We were told there were no available beds in the psychiatric unit. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Psychiatric unit. There you go. At that time, I learned something very, very painful. Many of the professionals who were supposed to help us blamed his autism instead of looking at his behavioral health and mental health needs. There was no understanding of the intersection between autism and behavioral health. There was very little support for us as a family. Today, we are still facing the same challenges. Behavioral health services for people with autism are extremely limited. Many professionals still say it's just the autism instead of providing the real mental health care. This is not acceptable. Because of these untreated behavioral health needs, my son cannot get a job. He cannot access meaningful programs. He stays home, and his life and our life has been on hold for years. Families like mine are left to struggle alone. We urgently need behavioral health professionals who understand autism. We need crisis supports. We need services that do not blame our children, but actually help them. When you are making decisions, please remember my story and remember that behavioral health supports for individuals with autism are essential for their safety, their dignity, and their future. Thank you all for your time and company.
Thank you, Mahad, for sharing Felice's story. Together, these 6 priorities reflect a shared vision. Communities where people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and delays and their families can thrive with dignity, connection, and opportunity. Thank you to all of our speakers for sharing your important stories tonight. And now I'd like to turn the program back over to Bradence and Onhill.
Thank you, Megan and Holly. Now we like to invite our elected official who joined us tonight to introduce themselves. Please share your names, the district or communities you represent, and any thoughts or reflections on the story you believe heard this evening. To ensure we have enough time to hear from everyone, we kindly ask each legislators to keep their remarks to 1 minute. Let's start here, and please pass the mic down.
Good evening. My name is Claire Wilson. I'm short. And I want to see people over there. Tall personality, but short. My name is Claire Wilson. I am senator of the 30th legislative district, which is in South King County, which includes Federal Way, unincorporated Auburn, Des Moines, half of Des Moines, Algona, Pacific, and a little tiny bit of Kent. What I would say is thank you for your stories tonight. They mean everything. My area of interest especially is early care and education, so ESIT and early childhood. The more we do, early on, the better our children and our families will be. So I promise you that will continue to be my focus, and just such an incredible group here tonight. And thank you so much for sharing. And Vivica, go 30th Legislative District.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Representative Jamila Taylor. I am 30th District State Representative serving with the Senator Wilson. I am thankful for you all this year. I first and foremost, I want to just thank you all for your grace this summer as I experienced a lot of challenges with the loss of both my parents, the stroke, and all the things in between. But knowing that you all were willing to bear with me as I'm coming back into the work, and knowing that life is lifing right now. I want to ensure that I've been paying attention on the national level and how those federal impacts are going to change lives here, sometimes for the better, but we must make sure that it is not for the worse. And I know that our colleagues here on the dais are absolutely committed to making sure Washingtonians, everyone in here, is protected from the harms that may come from the decisions that are made in the other Washington. And so I just want to thank you for your time tonight, and we're going to continue to listen. Absolutely want to maintain the momentum that we've had in the developmental disability advocacy in Washington State. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Daria Farivar. I'm state representative from the 46th Legislative District in Northeast Seattle, and it is so good to be here with you all tonight. Some of you may know that my roots are in the DD community, and it is just such a warm embrace to be back with all of you. I started my journey at Open Doors. I see many Open Doors folks here. And spent several years at Disability Rights Washington working on the intersection of behavioral health, the criminal legal system, and folks experiencing homelessness. And all of those issues are what I take with me into the legislature to work on under two very important values to me. One, the concept of nothing about us without us, listening to folks with direct lived experience, and true choice. And true choice doesn't mean you're choosing between a restrictive environment like an RHC or you're stuck in a hospital. It does not mean that you're choosing between homelessness and a jail cell. It means you have a full spectrum of services and options available to you, and you make a choice based on what's best for you, not based on what's available in the system. I want to thank all of you for coming out tonight, and I would also be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to remind folks to make sure that not only are we advocating in the legislature, but that we're also thinking about one of our most basic forms of advocacy, which is our right to vote. We've had lots of great conversations recently. My table talked a little bit about guardianship and voting and the nuances there. You actually have King County Elections outside in the hallway with you tonight, who is actually collecting information on how to make sure it is more accessible for folks to vote. And I know that there are folks in this room who have struggled to access their ballot. I encourage you to go take a chance to go chat with them and give them feedback to improve that system, because without that vote, you can't vote for the fine folks that are up here. And that is the foundation of our advocacy system and our democracy. So thank you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. Senator Fortunato, 31st Legislative District. A portion of my district is in Auburn, and it's basically the south part of Auburn and then up into the Muckleshoots on the way to Enumclaw. My sister had cerebral palsy. So growing up, I know what the stress is in a family of growing up with a disabled child. And my sister had a job, and she used to walk to that job. She had walked with a shuffle. She pushed a shopping cart. She walked to that job, and she earned her own money. She had pride in her work. I remember this. I was like, I don't know, 12, 15 years old. She had her own money. She would buy stuff. But then she lost her job. She went from walking with a shuffle to walking with a cane to walking with a walker to being in a wheelchair to dying of diabetes. And I contribute that to her lack of having a job. Having transportation and providing disabled people with that meaningful job to have their own money and own pride and reason for living is extremely important to me. In addition to that, my daughter has two disabled or two autistic children. You know, autistic to the point where if you cut his waffles in rectangles instead of triangles, he won't eat them. But his brother, the younger brother, was supposed to be dead by the time he was 3 years old. He was born with a weird syndrome. I can't remember the name. It's a mile long, where his brain does not tell him to breathe. He needs 24-hour monitoring. Somebody has to watch him. He's got a tracheotomy. While he's awake, he breathes, but if he falls asleep, gets drowsy, his oxygen level goes down. He's got to be hooked up to a ventilator. Somebody has to be there 24 hours a day. That means the doctor says he needs 24 hours of nursing care, but the insurance company only gives him 16. What's that mean to my daughter? Some nights she's staying up 24 hours a day. I have no idea how she's even surviving. So these things that we need, I asked her, I said, I'm going to this disability forum. You know, what do you want me to bring up? You want me to say anything? She goes, I know what the problems are. So I have my own consultant on disability issues that are near and dear to me. And I heard her encouraging you to vote. As the only Republican on this panel here, I would encourage you to vote the right way. So thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I am Lisa Callan. I represent the 5th Legislative District, which starts, I'm East King County in Southeast King County. So that's Issaquah all the way up to the top of Snoqualmie Pass and bits of Issaquah all the way down to wonderful Enumclaw, who I got to talk with some folks from Enumclaw tonight and really appreciate that. One of my, or several areas that I work in the legislature is in the early learning space and the K-12 space. In capital budget, which is a lot of housing and accessible housing and those needs, as well as behavioral health and the co-occurring and complex needs around behavioral health. And so you will see me continuing to dive into that in the legislative session, even in fact this upcoming legislative session, and really appreciate your voices, your stories, because that's what moves the dial on where we need to go, and recognizing where we are today and where we understand that it is just not good enough for where we need to go, for sure. I appreciated hearing not only from all the stories up here on the mic, but also from my constituents that were here today on SSI limits, on respite care access, on the system that requires repayment in the end, right? And the challenges that are around that, and the changes in the life of everyone when we're keeping the healthcare for workers with disabilities in place and making sure that that is safe in there. So thank you for bringing that voice. Thank you for making sure you're just not a line item in the budget, and making sure that we are hearing you and holding us accountable to making sure that your lives hold the meaning that we all know that it does. And thank you for enriching my life tonight.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jorge Baron, and I have the privilege of representing District 4 on the King County Council. District 4 is the northwest part of Seattle. It's actually the only county council district that's entirely within the city of Seattle, and I'm honored to be here and represent the county council at this event. I just want to express deep gratitude for everybody who shared their stories tonight, and for all of you for being here this evening. I think we're actually kind of in the middle of our budget process at the county, so I have some sympathy for the hard decisions that my state legislator colleagues are going to have to make over the coming months. But I think one of the things that we've grappled with some of the changes in the federal policies that we've discussed tonight, I think one thing that we keep talking about is the fact that people in the community don't care, or really should care about where the funding comes from for the services that are provided, right? The important thing is about making sure that those services are available. And so while I think it's difficult and it's challenging to deal with these federal changes, I think we have a recognition and importance that even though we have difficult decisions to make, that we need to prioritize on the people that we represent and the services that are provided, especially for being equitable in ensuring that we have inclusive services and we have services for everybody in the community. And so your stories tonight are deeply important in reminding us of all of that. So I really appreciate the time that you've taken to educate all of us and to advocate for ensuring that we have an equitable community here in Washington State and in King County. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nicole Macri, and I represent the 43rd Legislative District, which is a district in Seattle that goes from about the Pike Place Market to the University of Washington campus. And it is an honor to be here, and it's really great to have come to several of these forums over many years and to get to know some folks from my district who come every single year. I really want to thank folks. I know we always say thank you for sharing your story. It is a big deal to share the details of your life just one-on-one with somebody you don't know, much less an elected official, much less to a big room of folks. So really, thank you. It means so much. It's so intimate and important. And I'm really honored that you all have shared your experiences both here on the mic and at the table with folks from my district. In the legislature, I work a lot on budget issues. So I'm hearing the need for resources and take it to heart. I actually work a lot on issues related to disability, budget issues related to services, a lot on healthcare and on housing. But I do want to say the way the Washington State Legislature works, it really is a team effort. And so all the voices that you've heard before, all these great legislators who have spoken and the ones who are about to speak, I work very, very closely with them to make sure that we are bringing all of our strengths in education, in early learning, in housing, in home care services, in respite, and to make sure that we are building the policies and budget that will serve people in our own communities and in communities across the state. And your voices are so important to make sure that we do that well. So thank you so much for sharing, and continue to reach out to me and to others who represent you. So I really appreciate being here this evening.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Sharon Tomiko Santos, and I represent the 37th Legislative District. That area is central and southeast Seattle, as well as the unincorporated West Hill Skyway area of King County. Joining with my colleagues in saying thank you for your stories, I could pick up something from each of your stories. So let me just say Rachel and Nate, Destiny, Vivica, LaShayla, Sabah, and Mohad for Felice. You really not only touch our hearts with your stories, but you bring to life the policies that we have to grapple with in the legislature, which frankly, when you talk about policies, they're just words on paper. So it's these stories that we will carry with us into the legislature that bring those words to life. And I could not have said it better than Rachel when she said, none of you are a line item. None of you. I think for your information, what I wanted to share in order to keep everything brief is I'm very proud to serve as the chair of the House Education Committee. And so many of the issues that you've talked on about, whether it is school to work transitions, I'm so proud of you. It sounds like you are working in the district that you graduated from, and that is so special. We are working on trying to make sure every student has the opportunity for a career maybe even in the school district that they've graduated from. The idea of ensuring that you provide the supports to students as they depart from our K-12 system into adulthood and hopefully into independent living, where they can not only have a job but live on their own, to be able to be the best person that they can be and to fulfill their own dreams. These are all lessons that I learned. Some of you have heard me say this before, so I won't go into a great deal about it. These are all of the dreams and hopes that I heard as the daughter of a special education teacher. And I hold those lives and those friendships so deep in my heart. What I intend to focus in on and to elevate as the chair of the Education Committee is the civil and human rights of each and every student and their families in the state of Washington. And that means that we have to recognize that every one of the children and every one of the families that are served and are touched by our K-12 system has different needs, that need different supports. And yet, to deny those supports, to disregard those needs, is actually a violation of their constitutional civil right in the state of Washington and a denial of their human right as a member of our society. So with that umbrella, I continue to look forward to working with all of you, not only during the upcoming session, but in all the years to come. Thank you so much for being our partners.
Hello, my name is Mary Soderland. I work for Senator Tina Orwell, and she's very, very sad she couldn't be here with you tonight. I don't think she's ever missed one. She represents the 33rd District in South King County. She has been a strong advocate for language access and housing for the IDD community. She has a background in social work, and I know that behavioral health and mental health is very, very important to her. So you have her full support. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Manka Dhingra. I'm the senator from the 45th Legislative District. That's part of Redmond, Kirkland, Sammamish, and Duval. And thank you so much to each and every one of you for being here. And thank you again to our wonderful speakers and to the constituents who came out here. And I do want to give another shout out to our co-MCs. They truly have done an incredible job. And, I echo so much of what my colleagues have said, but I'm also someone who ends up being really, really realistic. And so this is what I want to tell all of you, is that at the end of the day, our budget is our value statement. What goes in there are the values that the state of Washington has. And it's going to be an extremely tough budget session. It was very hard last year. It's harder this year because of what the federal government has done to us. That's been done deliberately and very, very intentionally. And frankly, it's cruel. And so we have to figure out how we can make sure we're protecting every single Washingtonian. And so the only commitment I can make to all of you here today is that I'm going to try to work hard to make sure that we don't balance the budget on the backs of the most vulnerable in our state. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I get so much out of the opportunity to be with you at these sessions. My name is Elisa Wellman. I am a senator representing the 41st. Actually, I say, while I represent the 41st, I am voted on by the 41st, but I get up every day as chair of early learning and K-12 education in the Senate to make sure that everyone, every child from birth through our K-12 system has what they need to thrive in the next phase of their life as they move forward. Working very hard on that. I started off as a teacher with specialization in learning disabilities and worked in that space for a brief period of time when I switched to technology. And I tell you about the technology piece of it because unlike others here today, part of what I get to do, which I think is just really an honor, is to work with companies that are starting up, offering things that we haven't had available yet to work with all of you and working with startups, helping them develop their product and bring it to market, hopefully will make a difference. I'm working with a company called Unique Minds right now, and they have combined the knowledge of the developmentally disabled community with AI. And what is happening is being able to take your coach with you, if you will, on a job will allow many more people to go into jobs and hold jobs that they formerly required to have someone with them. And instead, they can take the someone with them with an AI device and move around their jobs and do that. I think that's going to make a significant change. And that's just one of the many things that are happening. So we're not stopping where we are as a society, as a culture. We are going to beyond. And I think beyond is going to get very exciting, is going to make more people able to go on to jobs, to earn a living, to have the dignity of being out there in the marketplace, just like everybody else. So thank you for your time, and we will remember your stories.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jamie Peterson. I represent the 43rd Legislative District, along with Representative Macri, so the center of Seattle, Capitol Hill, Montlake, the University District, downtown First Hill. I am also serving now as the Senate Majority Leader and was most proud this last session to be the prime sponsor of the special education funding bill that helped provide the extra support that we were able to give to early support for infants and toddlers in our budget. We put about over 4 years, something in the neighborhood of $800 million of additional money in a very difficult budget into special education services because of the stories that we heard from people just like you talking to us about the extra support that you need. We know that it's not enough, and so we'll continue to work on that. But as Senator Dingra mentioned, this is going to be an extremely difficult budget cycle. That's one of the reasons that I think our caucus will be working with our colleagues in the House on long-term changes to our tax system so that we'll have the resources to make the investments in people that you all have talked to us about. Thank you all very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Roger Goodman from the 45th Legislative District, serving with Senator Dingra and Northeast King County. This is only my 18th legislative forum. I don't know if you remember the ice storm many years ago. Wasn't able to make it there, but so 19 years ago I was elected, and within a few days, not even a week, members from your community reached out to me. I didn't know anything about developmental disabilities, intellectual disabilities. And so I would say that you are among the best, or in fact, the most effective advocacy community, because you got me. And so I want to thank all of you for your stories. You really put a face and a voice to these issues. Very, very compelling. And it really moves us to preserve our priorities and values, which is that we put people first, and we take care of those who are vulnerable and those who aren't able to meet their needs first. So rest assured, despite the budget constraints, that we will hold to those priorities and values.
Hi everyone. I'm here on behalf of Senator Noel Frame. I am but a lowly LA, and I'm also not a stander. But my name is Kelsey. I just want to reflect back some of the things I heard from you guys today, because I would like to show that we're listening, and I want to make sure that we're going to bring that back to the senator, even though she's not here with her regrets. Definitely commitments are greater than buzzwords. At the end of the day, I also heard what resonated a lot for me was just the emphasis on freedom, agency for every single person in this room, and what that looks like for you. I also want to reflect the intersectionality that I heard in a lot of your conversations, whether that's immigration, whether it's CPS services, whether it's foster care. We have to remember that your lives overlap in a lot of the systems that we talk about as if they're separate, but they're not. So I want to make sure that you know we heard that. I also want to make sure that I know you said that as we're making decisions, you want us to think of your story. We will be doing that. I will make sure my senator does that. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Usman Salahuddin, and I see a lot of Muslim community members. Assalamu alaikum. Wa alaikum salam. So I'm the only and the first Muslim ever elected to our state House of Representatives, which is a thank you. So Sabah, a lot of what you have shared, a lot of what all of you have shared with us really resonates with me, especially my district is the 48th legislative district, which includes, which includes parts of Bellevue, Redmond, Kirkland, and the Points communities. And it's over 43% immigrants and refugees. And we need to make sure that as we're investing, we take care of all of our residents in the face of federal attacks. I also see Mahad here, who spoke on behalf of Felice. He's actually one of my friends. I really appreciated, I appreciated hearing from each one of you, the unique experiences that you're facing in your own communities, and how we as legislators and county council members and other representatives can take those stories and really advocate for your voice. I was inspired in just my first year this session, so I'm only 18 away from Roger right here, to be able to take a lot of my inspiration from my mother. She is a special education preschool para-educator over in Redmond, and I'm truly inspired every single day by the work that she does. I want to make sure that, with Senator Peterson's bill and all of our bill on special education, that we continue that work, continue our investments, even amidst a difficult budget year, and prioritize our investments in the intellectual developmental disability space. So thank you all so much.
So hi, I'm Bob Hasagawa. I'm senator for this legislative district right here, which is the grade 11th. Raise the flags, table tents over there. First, I want to acknowledge or thank the leaders who developed the legislative agenda, because to me it's obvious they're acknowledging that we are in a budget crisis. Everything leads off with protect Medicare, preserve care for infants, protect employment, maintain, don't cut. That's the bottom line, the message that I'm getting from your legislative agenda. That's great. But when we're in a budget crisis, that also provides opportunities to work on other issues. And thank you to all of you for sharing your messages here today. But I got some strong messages sitting down talking with my constituents at the 11th district. There are so many barriers that are just unnecessarily bureaucratic and make life so much more difficult for those of you who already have too much difficulty in your lives. This is an opportunity to try and identify some of those barriers. Let me give you an example. For instance, foster care mother took on an emergency child, special needs child, doesn't know about foster mothering, but the child had issues. Called for some help, was told to call the police. Said, I don't want to call the police. It doesn't raise to that level. Call the crisis center. And the person that comes out did nothing but escalate the problem, ended up calling the police, the firefighters, an ambulance, when it was totally unnecessary. Training could have prevented that. So let's work on pushing training through all of our service providers. Another issue, somebody was released from Western State. No ID. So when you're released from Western State and you have to go to adult home care or whatever, to go through the system, you need to have ID. So that just stymied and made life so much more difficult. We could have easily provided ID upon release from Western State. Another one is where somebody who is not very highly functional required to sign paperwork and was refused services but couldn't sign the paperwork, so was just being ping-ponged back and forth. These things drive me crazy. I apologize for some of the colorful language I used at the table earlier, but this is an opportunity to identify all of these systemic things that don't cost money but are just driving you all nuts in one way or another. And I'm sure you're all experiencing those. So my ask going forward from this meeting is that the organizers in this room try and collect some of these stories. Let's identify where these needless barriers and obstacles that each one of you are facing, how we can try and overcome some of those barriers. And let's put some pressure on the administrative side, the executive branch, to identify and resolve a lot of these barriers and make your lives much more easier than they already are. So, I mean, that didn't come out right, but you know what I mean. So anyway, that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Did we miss anyone? Thank you to all the elected officials for being here and sharing with us tonight. I am now going to turn back over to Holly and Megan.
As we close tonight, we want to take a moment to honor those we've lost this year. People whose advocacy, care, and strength shaped our community. Their impact lives on through the changes they inspired and the love they shared. The mural in the hallway celebrates their lives and the legacy they leave behind, but it is more than that. It is a celebration of all of our lives, a reflection on our resiliency, and an opportunity to share a loving message to support each other as we continue our work. We want to share our heartfelt gratitude to our incredible MCs, Bradens and Onhill, and our community speakers. For guiding us through tonight's event with such care and energy. Special thanks to the Arc of King County for hosting tonight's legislative roundtables. Washington Multicultural Services Link for providing cultural navigation and outreach support. Open Doors for Multicultural Families for providing supports to our co-MCs. And community members and service providers who helped spread the word about our hybrid event.
And of course, to our amazing King County staff. Your dedication and commitment make this event and many of the services available possible. We see you and we deeply appreciate you. Tonight's event is a powerful reminder of the importance of our collective work to support children with developmental delays and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families. Together, we are creating a more inclusive and equitable community where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. Thank you all for being here tonight and for contributing your time and effort to make our 36th annual King County Legislative Forum such a success.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight.